You're watching The New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more information and articles about at-scale technologies, please visit thenewstack.io. Now enjoy the show. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Great, Alex. How are you?
Steve Demchuk of Nitric, and what is your title there again?
I'm CEO.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you're founder and CEO.
No, two technical founders, way cooler than me.
But the story of how you guys got together, I like. I remember, Can you recall it? I'm trying to recall it now because you had been working somewhere else and then you met them. Like, what's the story there?
Yeah, so we met at Avoca, which was a FinTech software startup. And really fun one because we were actually building high-end front ends for banks. And the reason we were able to do that is they invented a great server product that you hosted in the cloud to basically take all the transaction data from humans and store it in a safe place. Well, we gave a great experience to people, and then that integrated with back-end banking.
So you could give that really great experience, but you had all the data on the back end.
That's right. And imagine this, it's pretty hard to innovate on a bank's back end. So the fact that our technology was transactional, it was hosted in a private cloud, we were able to actually build and use latest technology on top of that. So I met Jai and Tim through that. They worked with the biggest banks in the world. They're those types of people that architects would really want to meet with. And so we had a really successful run there. We were bought by Temenos, a really large global back-end banking business. Tim and Jai actually ran all the front-end applications, about $1 billion in acquisitions. And I left to go to another startup. And when I left, I looked at them both and said, if you ever start a startup, I'm your first call. And so 2 years later, I got the call, and we started Nitric.
So Nitric, tell us a little bit about it. I would love to actually hear the problem that you first saw, and maybe that can then parlay into helping us understand what the company does.
I think the biggest frustration of a really talented developer is not being able to use the tools that they want to use.
Not being able to use the tools they want to use.
Yep.
And meaning that their architecture can't support them?
Architecture can't support them. They're being told to use outdated DevOps tooling. They're not using the language they want to use. So the original problem was actually working with large banks, working with regulated customers who wanted to do a modernization project with a lot of handcuffs. And so everybody would talk to you about, I want to look like Netflix, but the realities of their business of just hosting with one cloud provider, choosing that cloud provider, choosing the language, choosing which IAC DevOps tool really wasn't that realistic, and our guys wanted to change that. So
did they want to provide automation to then take those regulatory concerns into consideration?
You nailed it. It's actually what they really wanted to do, and what they built was just write application code, build the app that you're trying to build. We will look at that app, inspect it, create an infrastructure spec, and then automate building the infrastructure.
So what's that infrastructure underneath? I mean, we've been writing about you for a long time. You've contributed lots of articles, but for the community out there, they may not be too familiar. What is that infrastructure layer that provides that capability for engineers to use the tools they want to use?
That's awesome. We built the Nitric framework. The Nitric framework literally is an abstraction layer. So it's taking the common elements of any cloud application. So just imagine you need database, functions, compute, storage, queues, messaging, and we've created that to be basically support any language, and we can support any IAC provider, so Terraform, Pulumi, and then we can deploy to any cloud. And we're doing that through basically an SDK, a CLI for the developer, and then we have the server product that does that translation of looking at your app code, figuring out all the infrastructure requirements, and then when you go to deploy, you tell us where the target deployment is, which cloud, and we're going to automate that infrastructure based off of those choices.
And that's an automated aspect of the service you provide.
Exactly, yep.
So what were the problems that you had to overcome when building that middle layer?
What was interesting is that when we first built it, when the guys released it, they really thought their first customers were going to be multi-cloud, portability concerns, like, hey, I want to write one code base and deploy it to any cloud. Our original design partners were just really excited that they found a framework that was opinionated and could just put them in some guardrails within AWS or Google. And so the first challenge that we came to was people coming to us and saying, hey, I love how much faster I'm writing app code, but what I don't love is I'm still writing all the Terraform, or I'm writing all the AWS CDK or whatever they've chosen. And they basically came to us and said, can we automate that? And so that was kind of, I would say, the second invention of the Nitric framework was, instead of it being infrastructure as code, it was being infrastructure from code. So you write your app code, we can look at it and infer all the right requirements so that we could actually automate the infrastructure creation from that step on.
So infrastructure from code is a term that I believe is relatively new.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you help engineers understand that?
You have to show them. So number one, we're really proud that we started as an open source framework. I mean, it's certainly a strategy because we believe tools like this should be extendable. People should know exactly what's going on from it. You have to earn the trust by making sure people know what's happening. So the good news for us is we are gaining that, when you create a new category, you're gonna have to be a bit patient and you're gonna have to solve real problems. So by open sourcing it and being really willing to jump in and help people build out POCs, we do that every single day. It's those two things that get the mind share, and then once people use it, they love using it because it's in their language of choice, and we mimic the dev experience of like their favorite frameworks.
You mimic the experience. How do you do that?
Yeah, so we use gRPCs as a...
you do?
Yeah, so as long as gRPC supports the language, we can write an SDK for that language. And then, we're inspired. Like if you're gonna be in TypeScript, we're gonna use, our favorite TypeScript type of style. Same thing with Python. So whatever, Python, Go, your language of choice. So it's basically look at the popular frameworks in those languages and make sure that's the experience that we're giving through our SDK for it.
So Rust, Java, Python, TypeScript, are there languages out there?
Another fun one that we just did for a customer was Dart. So it's like, hey, I'm writing mobile UIs, but we really need great backend development. Love what you guys are doing for backend development. Can you do it with Dart? So came out with language support for that.
How come you just didn't go with an API integration instead of why'd you choose gRPC?
We just wanted to make sure that we could support multiple languages no matter what and keep growing the list however we needed to. The other thing that we knew was important to us was a local experience. So basically, if you look at the whole Nitric stack, we want to make sure that we're emulating your experience that you're going to have in the cloud on local. So we chose tools like gRPC that would make that possible for multi-language.
So do APIs not exactly fit?
No, we support APIs. That's a huge value prop for us, is building an API in an hour.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's just common.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I would say it's probably one of the first use cases if you're trying out Nitric. You're probably your first thing is building an API.
So how do companies transition to these environments if they have been following infrastructure as code principles where they use, capabilities such as Terraform? Yeah.
So it's interesting. If you're already been using a common JavaScript framework, like let's say you've been using Express or Koa, we actually have HTTP support, so we could just wrap your current code, and then after you do that, see some of the benefits as you're writing that code and get the generation piece coming. Obviously, you can delete a lot of the IAC code as you're doing that. So that's what we do with current projects. What's more likely, what we typically see, is people start with Nitric with a greenfield project, build something new, get everybody figuring out, hey, this is how it works, this is the benefits, and then we go back and retrofit apps that are probably using cloud provider technology.
So that's a good sum up for how people might use it. And I expect that your customers are engineering leads and their teams.
Yeah, I would say ICP, ideal customer profile, is a technology leader that has built in the cloud and has understanding of the developer concerns and the platform team. So whoever the developers and platform team rolls up into is our ideal person to talk to, because they typically are hearing the concerns from both sides of that fence and have a real motivation to make their teams more productive and have the developer experience be first class.
What are the trade-offs they weigh when they're considering what you do?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we always talk about convenience versus control. So I would say those people who are really high leaning towards convenience, like want a ton of automation, are really looking for speed, are going to be less resistant to a change of doing something like Nitric. People who are high control, it's an illusion. They think that they're going to have to give up some control. Like, I think when people hear infrastructure from code, they get really nervous that it's just developers' code and then infrastructure just comes out of nowhere. That's not true at all. Like, we are actually building the guardrails from the platform team that they want, and then that's what the developers are self-serving from. So that's I would say our biggest challenge is making sure platform leaders that are really on the, like, hey, I want to know exactly what's happening, I want control. It's making sure that they understand that's exactly why we built Nitric, was for their opinions plus like their guardrails to actually be consistently applied to the developer's environment.
What is an example of how customers use those guardrails, and with that, helping us understand what those guardrails actually are?
So a really good example would be the choices that you're making inside a cloud provider. So I think here, being at Google Next, if you're using GCP, there's, I think, over 300 services that you get to choose from. So imagine a platform team and trying to come out to their developer audience and saying, hey, what are you building? Oh, I'm building this type of app. Well, within that app architecture, there's a lot of choices at your disposal. A really common use case, and I'll use one of our biomedical customers, is really the platform team choosing for the different use cases. So, hey, for data capture, we want to use a serverless architecture type. So it's actually, the guardrails are saying, when you go to deploy for Google, you're going to be using this serverless. If you deploy to AWS, it's going to go to Lambda. And then it also, at the same time, puts in least privileged security provisions to make sure that the developers aren't starring all, that type of stuff. The other thing that we do that's, I think, very underappreciated is tagging every resource that you create, so that, you know, basically any of the scanning tools that you need for code quality or performance are there by default.
So you constantly scanning then the environments that you're helping manage, or are they doing that on their side?
It's actually it flows with the development process. So as developers are writing and updating code, we're real time updating with them. So it's not a scan on static analysis tool. It's as developers are developing, when changes are made, our tech is right there with them.
When do you start thinking about your own infrastructure and how you advance it?
Yeah.
This event seems fitting for that kind of discussion.
Let's talk about AI here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been really cool for us to see, you know, being at a show like this where Google just released IDP Cloud, which I think we're a perfect fit for. It's their developer portal technology. That's fantastic. All the new things that are going on with agentic AI. What we have found is, first of all, our teams had to change a lot as we write the Nitric core service, as we write that service. We've been using a cursor to actually use agentic AI to write app code. And what we've had to learn is, so as you're using AI to write app code, how does Nitric add value in that? And that's actually in the infrastructure provisioning. So thinking, it's actually really kind of a great complement. What we've seen is the way that people are starting to code is, let's let people be creative, build code quickly, but let's make sure the guardrails are in the right place, which is going to be around security, infrastructure provisioning, making good architecture choices. It fits us really well.
Okay, so take us through an example then. Someone's writing code.
Yep.
They're using a code completion tool.
Yep.
They may be actually generating code from a model.
Yep.
Right? next step?
Yep.
Where do you all come in?
We're just putting out a guide, I think, at the end of this week about working with people that are building deep models, deep learning models. They're going to want to first be able to build those locally. So first of all, with Nitric, you can build that locally. You don't even have to choose the LLM at that point. You can start building a model, test it locally, make sure it works, and then at provision times, the first time, now you're going to be making choices of which LLM and honestly incurring a bill. So that's a very typical model. Another one is because we are working with people that have data, big teams of data engineers. Data engineers work a lot on building local models on their laptops, and cloud infrastructure provisioning and cloud architecture is probably, they can learn it because they're super smart people, but it's not their day job. So it's the same thing, is making sure we see the architecture patterns they need for the models they're deploying, and we create basically the guardrails to make sure that those are deployable to production.
So are you always studying architecture patterns?
No, because, for example, if you just went and used the Nitric framework today, we have, without any extension, we've just picked very common services for each of the core providers. And in that case, I would say, those are just standard architecture patterns. But if people want to extend Nitric, it's because they want their architecture pattern being reinforceable. So my point being is, I think if you just use Nitric, it's pretty standard in cloud development, but we wanted to make sure that it's extensible to kind of match what you want.
So again, take me through how you develop those guardrails for AI-generated code. And so then, they can use the tools they want to use and feel safe about it.
Yeah. So instead of, I think a very typical pattern for someone today would be you write app code, but then your platform team is going to have to either write the Terraform or Pulumi or their ISC of choice to support the resource provisioning. And those two things don't really talk very well together. It's usually a people problem, not a technology problem. And then when technology is involved, it's a lot of templates and portals and things that get stagnant. So the way that we're helping in that is it's truly app code being written or being generated, and then that's what's creating the spec that actually turns into the infrastructure as code. So my point being, it's kind of going away from writing two code bases that you're trying to keep in sync, and instead write your core business app, and we're going to be taking care of the infrastructure creation based off of only the infrastructure you need for that app code.
And that's the real complexity and bear that comes with Terraform.
That's it. Yeah, and Terraform, thank you so much for existing, and thank you, HashiCorp. And we see infrastructure from code and Nitric is a total complement and extension to what they've done. But we love working with Pulumi. They're being able to build in developers' favorite languages is also a thing that we do. So just want to point out, we know we're riding on their shoulders, but we see what we could do for them next.
How will their presence and their history in your positioning as an infrastructure from code provider intersect with customers' acceleration of AI technologies?
I'll tell you what, there was kind of pre-demo, post-demos as we've gone into real customer lifecycle examples where we used to just show how quickly and how what an amazing experience it would be for a developer to get to production. But we realized the real story was in the actual IAC that was produced and how easy it was then to customize from the platform team. So the real power of a demo is when you show that the architecture choices that they made are being consistently applied, and when they evolve, they can actually extend what's been generated. So it really is making sure the platform team sees there is convenience, but when they need control, they've got it.
Have you had to make any adaptations to your own infrastructure?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, we used Pulumi's deployment engine when we first came out, and guess what? As we started taking customer projects, that's when we realized, wow, a lot of people want the same capability with Terraform, so we extended that. Then we got, hey, can you do that same thing with AWS CDK? So what we first thought maybe we could be opinionated on the IAC provider, we learned pretty quickly, no, people wanted, just like they want choice in cloud or language, they wanted it on the infrastructure as code provider as well.
So how do you expect that to evolve?
I think, let's be honest, anybody that's watching the space is going to say, well, when is infrastructure as code just going to be generated fully by AI? I think that's what we're all watching to see is like, it takes a ton of context to be able to do that with an infrastructure. So the agentic code agents, I think, it's at a good size where it's working really well. It's going to take a little bit longer. So it's certainly what we're all playing with. You see Pulumi working on it. You see all of us working on how do those two things blend? Like the intelligence of the architects with the things that can be automated.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for taking some time.
Thanks. It's always fun talking to you.
You too. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.